Welcome everyone, this is Tactical Lich here, and today we will have our first Total War Warhammer 3 battle replay casting in Domination mode. I was playing some multiplayer Domination battles in the stream earlier, and the conclusion is that mobility is king in this mode. The proof is this Kislev replay where we have a full cavalry starting army with a heavy war sled accompanied by a couple winged lances, and then also 4 horse archers roaming the battlefield. In the reserves, we have even more cavalry with more winged lances, another heavy war sled, and to counter some big monsters that Kislevite might bring, say the dragons and the terracotta sentinels, we have a single warbear riders. And of course, you need to capture stuff, so you need infantry, so armored Kossars, one of them with great weapons, and a couple Kislevite dervishes. As for hero support, we have the Patriarch coming with the heals and attack supporting buffs, as well as Tsarina Katerin coming with a bunch of ice spells. Now, for the Kislevite army, a rather slow and grindy build compared to my swift and agile cavalry build. We have a bunch of peasant long spears for the starting army, Zhao Ming, the Iron Dragon, accompanied by a Terracotta Sentinel, 2 alchemists, no doubt trying to get that elemental winds bonus to increase the spell effectiveness, and also in the reserve we have a whole bunch of cavalry, Jade Lances, peasant horsemen, accompanied by Jade Warriors, some Iron Hell Gunners, and also a couple more Jade Warriors crossbows with shields. Also another Sentinel and a Kislevite Bombard Cannon. And that's basically for the army builds. Let's move on to the battlefield, where I will talk about the tactical issues in Domination mode with a little bit more detail. Personally, I find one of the biggest problem of the Domination game mode is that it forces you, the slower factions, to divide your army to rush for different points. You have the Kislevite army now pushing for 2 points. Over here we have some spears pushing forward, and here is the main forces with the crossbows, actually archers, and a bunch of Jade Warriors and long spears trying to form a blob pushing for the middle objective. So what I can do is to divide and conquer. Any multiplayer or even single players would know that isolate your opponent's forces and using your mobility to charge them down, run them down is basically the most cost-efficient way to face off any kind of engagement. And this is exactly what we're doing here. We have some horse archers harassing the peasant long spears. They're forming 2 flanks here, hoping to fend off my cavalry. But I'm not really taking the engagement just yet. We have the horse archers firing in, doing some damage to the peasant long spears. Of course, my opponent will be responding with the peasant archers. They'll be doing some really good damage to the lightly armored horse archers, but honestly, I don't care. I'm not really gonna face down that position right now. Instead, I'll be sneaking through these winged lances through the gap between these 2 peasant long spears, and now they're behind enemy lines, rushing for the back line, and my opponent seeing this will be probably pulling back these peasant long spears to protect the artillery, and which is exactly what they're doing right now. But honestly, this is really not what my focus is. I can just whip around these winged lances and go for a straight rear charge into all these peasant long spears. And with all these horse archers and heavy war sleds supporting, I'm just destroying all these peasant long spears in a quick hurry, while we have more horse archers rushing towards this side and going for another rear charge, basically sandwiching all these peasant long spears. Albeit the winged lances taking some minor damage and the horse archers taking quite a bit of damage from the peasant archers, I'm still having a really cost-effective engagement here. We broke apart 2 spearmen units while taking basically no damage in return. Yes, the units are damaged, but they're from the final transmutation as well as the peasant archer fire. The peasants, being good, simply was not able to do any damage. And while my opponent being quite busy working on my other flank with final transmutations and whatnot, I just rammed some of my winged lances and horse archers into the great cannon crew. And now the Grand Cannon crew got knocked off the artillery, and not sure if it's a bug or a feature. Sometimes if the Grand Cannon crew gets out of decrew the artillery, an explosion occurs, all the ammunition is gone, and as a result they can't recruit the artillery piece anymore. Anyways, on this flank, Jade Warriors with halberds are sitting around fending off my cavalry, so I'll be pulling back, while my other flank cavalry have successfully routed both long spearmen, and the whole flank of the Kislevite over here is basically open, free for picking, as my cavalry is just running down these routed units. And now we have some horse archers now pressuring the deployment zone of the Kislevite army, and Kislevite being rather slow, they can't really respond to these kind of mobile threat, even if they start spawning in peasant cavalry or Jade Lances, simply because Kislev have the better cavalry out of the 2 factions. Cathay simply can't challenge Kislev mobility. Anyways, my horse archers are still harassing my opponent's rear and flank. Other cavalry contingent here are just retreating as there's nothing good for picking due to all these Jade Warriors with halberds and long spears standing around. Instead, there's this basically unprotected middle blob of characters, single entities like the Terracotta Sentinel. And now my cavalry is just rushing in, and if we can get a quick rout on these peasant archers, we can basically get more free damage, and especially with all my mobility forces just able to concentrate, converge in the middle, while my opponent desperately trying to huddle around this little position here, trying to protect the spawn point, preventing any more missile units being spawn camped. They won't be able to support this engagement easily, especially with the Grand Cannon being knocked out and not able to fire at all. Anyways, with the Winged Lancers charging in, the Peasant Archers taking massive damage. Terracotta Sentinels, as well as the characters are fighting valiantly. Even some Jade Lancers are rushing in, but my Winged Lancers, all my Skirmish Cav contingents are just overloading this little blob. A nice breath attack from the spells there, blasting away some of my cavalry models. Cathay Jade Lancers coming in for a rear charge on the Cav blob, doing some pretty decent impact damage on the Horse Archers. Even more of my Skirmish Cav are charging in, using that mass of cavalry to really dish out the pain against the outnumbered and surrounded Jade Lancers of Cathay. As the Jade Lancers is really not the greatest cavalry of all time, being charged by some Horse Archers, they'll be taking some decent damage, and now even some War Bears are being summoned and surrounding the Terracotta Sentinel, using their anti-large armor piercing to really beat down this huge statue of the Cathay. While the damage heavy works led, the damage coming from the final transmutation, also a huge intensity due to the elemental winds effect, they will not be engaging right now, not exactly needed to engage exactly, using up their ammo, chipping away the health of the Terracotta Sentinel. While at the back, the Horse Archers are still roaming around, while the Cathay army will be making a push for this little objective over here, hoping to cap at least 1 point, while also capping in the middle, getting those points coming in. But honestly, right now, I'm not really fussed about capping. Instead, I'll just be really focusing on trading against my opponent, using that mobility to my advantage here, running down as many units as possible, mostly just trying to thin out my opponent's forces as much as possible while my own army snowballs. Now even summoning in some of my armored Corsairs, making a push for the middle. These are the unarmored ones, probably will provide some missile support, and the great weapons are following up. Will be great to deal with the Terracotta Sentinels, make a little bit more of an infantry presence, supporting against all these Jaded Lancers and tech characters and whatnot. And right now, Zhao Ming and the Terracotta Sentinel, due to the lack of healing, they're not holding up too well, while my Warbear Riders have been dishing out some huge damage against my opponent here, especially with the support of the Patriarch here, already up to over 1k damage value. Pretty decent stuff, while my tattered Winged Lancers as well as some of our Horse Archers are now pressuring the back lines of the enemy, pressuring their spawn point yet again, as the units who just got spawned in are really clumped up, not able to fan out in terms of formation, and without proper formation they can't exactly fight effectively. Even some of my dervishes were able to get through their defenses and get onto the Iron Hell Gunners behind them. Well, over here, some of the Winged Lancers are now supporting this, albeit being tattered, are now supporting this fight, charging to some peasant horsemen, and a rear charge from the Horse Archers, who are just holding for the longest of times due to that by our blood effect, actually routed these peasant horsemen from the Cathay, who are actually much more healthier, getting some final value from the unit. And in the middle, we have the Heart of the Winter spell going on earlier, draining the health of this whole blob. Not exactly the greatest against single entities, but still damage is damage. And with the Warbear Riders, as well as my great weapons, Armored Corsairs, the Terracotta Sentinel is going down due to the valiant charging of my hero squad. And the Zhao Ming, the Iron Dragon, is surrounded by Warbears, not exactly having the greatest of time. Anyways, even the Warslide are charging in, just dealing damage to the Alchemist, while over on the flank we have finally some of my Skirmish Horse Archers are going to cap a point, sneakily rush over to Objective 3 here, while we have the Kislevite Dirkishes just circling around. Oops, let us just switch over to the arrow, circle around trying to hunt down these peasant horsemen, as my Horse Archers are now being caught in combat by the peasant horsemen. But now here comes the dervishes charging straight towards the peasant horsemen. They will have a nice charge, and even up against a numerically superior enemy, The Bar of Blood unbreakable effect can help the dervishes hold for as long as possible. This buys time for other Kislev mobility to reinforce, like these winged lancers, as the Kislevite are now charging in some peasant horsemen, enveloping all these Kislevite dervishes. But now winged lancers are rushing in, and here's the Bar of Blood effect, keeping the Kislevite dervishes holding in combat. And now the Kislevite peasant cavalry are broken off by my tattered dervishes and winged lancers. While my horse archers just sitting here, not exactly capping the point due to the peasant long spears, but they should be firing. Not sure why they're not. Probably a bug or something, because I did put them on fire at will. Either ways, that is not quite important here, as we have more armored Kossars just spamming all these infantry trying to cap at this point, as they will be easily capturing this point by cutting down the peasant long spears, while the rest of the winged lancers in reserves are all summoned, coming down the mountainside, not exactly charging in just yet due to them being so far away from our opponent. But over here we have the Warbear and the Winged Lancers easily winning this fight against the Peasant Horse. The Bar of Blood faction ability is so good here. The Dervish Horse Archers are still holding. In response, Kite reinforcing with that Terracotta Sentinel, smacking all these Kislev cavalry with that big old Guandao. But they will be holding for now, just using their anti-large armor piercing as much as possible to dish out the damage. While over here the Warsled is absolutely lobbing down all these Jade Lancers, infantry of the Kite, just clogging up the whole deployment zone, the spawn point of the whole Kite army, making a massive traffic jam. While Zhao Ming, the Kite leader, is now in his dragon form floating in the skies. Cannot really drop in to engage in melee combat right now due to all these winged lancers, the superior infantry present, and now the Jade Warriors trying to charge in, but the armored Kossars will be pinning them down, blocking them out of the capture zone. So basically I have total control on at least two spawn point, not spawn points, but objectives right now. Over here we have the armored Kossars capturing one of the objectives. Over here I basically pinned down all their units and bottled them up right behind this spawn point. And now they can't really get in. While over here one unit of Jade Warriors with halberds are rushing in, but my armored Kossars will be pinning them down. While over here some Jade Warriors with crossbows being rear charged by some horse archers. Despite having decent melee stats, 24 melee defense and 16 melee attack, the charge bonus of the horse archers will be quite enough to put a dent in their HP, preventing them from supporting this fight over here, as my armored Kossars are now enveloping these peasant long spears and probably able to put some missile attacks into the Jade Warriors with crossbows as well. And objective 1 is now under my control, as I do have more infantry present over on this end. And now with my cavalry just running around the battlefield the whole time, well, the Jade Lancers are no match for the Winged Lancers, of course, and they will be being broken swiftly with the support of some heavy war sleds. Iron Hail Gunners are pushing in a second unit of Iron Hail Gunners even, but I do have my heavy war sleds and the Winged Lancers here, easily able to run down all these Iron Hail missile support. While in the middle, we have the Winged Lancers pinning in all these Jade Warriors with the help of some great weapons, Kossars, and the Terracotta Sentinels just struggling to push through this infantry blob. Now we do have some peasant long spears pushing in, but we still have these armored Kossars at the back shooting at the great Terracotta Sentinel, and they will be just struggling for this little objective zone. And while the whole time, objective 3 is just uncontested due to all these Kite forces stretching thin, not having the greatest resource input right now for them, as I do have my comeback advantage, and Kite leading ahead on points does not have that comeback bonus. So really just using that extra resource generation to my advantage and keep streaming in all my units. Over here we have the Jade Warriors finally being broken off by the Horse Archers and Kislevite Dervishes. But over here we have still the Kite is just poorly bottlenecked up in this spot, with all my war sleds and cavalry just pinning down all their units. Some of the Iron Hail Gunners are being routed, and yeah, they try to rush in some peasant horsemen, but will be countercharged by the dervishes. And with the close presence of more winged lancers, yeah, these peasant horsemen are not gonna be hanging around for long, while the Iron Hail Gunners actually blocked by the line of sight by all these horsemen, unable to fire and dish out any damage, while my winged lancers will just be roaming around the battlefield. This choke point really just keep blobbing up, pinning down all their supporting cavalry, while my other winged lancers who have just came out from the reserve pool will be flooding in, charging into the Jade Lances, as my armored Corsairs will be struggling against the peasant long spear for the control in this little blob. But with the war sled ramming into the side of these poor peasants, well, these peasants are not going to hang around for long either. Quickly terror routing them probably, or at least dropping their leadership massively, and then they are now routed, leaving only the Terracotta Sentinel in the middle of the fight. While over here, Terracotta Sentinel still trying to grind through all these winged lances, and now there are more cavalry from Kislev flanking around, getting into the back lines of Cathay. Having free roam on the battlefield, now running down all these tattered Jade Lances. Iron Hell Gunners not gonna hang around for long either, as they're not exactly a good melee combatant. And now all three objectives are in my hands, as my armored Corsairs are just driving towards their spawn point, threatening to perform a spawn camp on Cathay. Anything that they try to get out from the reinforcement pool, my armored Corsairs will be able to pin them down, while over here my opponent trying to sneakily get out some Jade Warriors with crossbows, and probably gonna circle them around to start firing into this position. But unfortunately, I do have some winged lances spotting them and just gonna ramrod them straight in the back, and that is the problem with the domination mode and reinforcement pools. It forces you to separate your army, some of them pushing for objectives, and some of them at the back will be slowly trickling out. And if your opponent has the mobility superiority, they can easily just head over to your spawn pool and just destroy your isolated forces like this. You spawn out some forces and then they will just get charged down by your enemies. This is a huge problem for balancing, because slower factions will inevitably suffer a lot more, and this needs to be addressed by either tournament rules or some kind of in-game mechanisms developed by CA themselves. Either ways, the Cathay forces are really thin out, not much going on for them at this point, as all the infantry are basically gone. They're running out of resources, and I'm just running down their cavalry with my own cavalry, the superior winged lances. And with that, that is a 3-cap victory for the Horse Archer Spam army. Overall, we can see that one of the stronger ways to play this game is just to abuse that mobility advantage, use a really powerful skirmishing full cav force to divide and conquer your enemy. Just like here, my opponent having the Cathay army, which is bound to split up at some point, as they do not have the mobility advantage we have here. The infantry will have to be pushing for multiple objectives, or else they will be turtling in their spawn point or on one objective and lose the game by not capturing more points than their opponents. And when they split up the army, this is where the mobility of the Kislev forces strike. Just like the couple poor long spearmen who got isolated and gooned by all my winged lances, some of the horse archers, and even the heavy war sleds. A quick surround of all these cavalry broke them in no time, while my other force of mobility, a winged lancer and a couple horse archers, were hitting the main army from the other side, knocking out that cannon crew, and quickly retreating, harassing my opponent until I find a better engagement. So basically, kiting is not dead, it is still a thing, and it is stronger and more annoying than ever. And even if Cathay wants to counter my mobility by bringing their own mobility, such as all these Jade Lances and Peasant Horsemen, I have better mobility simply with these Winged Lances, as well as my Kislevite dervishes, as well as my 4 horse archer units, basically swarming all their mobility, getting their mobility advantage and rear charge their backlines and their infantry to death. The combination of heavy war sleds, winged lances, and the war bears are so strong, all of them outperforming their own cost by a huge margin, wreaking havoc among enemies' lines and getting that army mass advantage there, snowballing my army to a rather terrifying size. And once I establish my mobility advantage, I can stream in these armored Corsairs to capture the objectives and maintain that map control with the help of cavalry and the better infantry of the Kislevite army, denying all these Jade Warriors and Peasant Long Spears from hitting up any objectives, while the Terracotta Sentinels were basically focused down by my combination of Warbear Riders, pistol fire from all my infantry, as well as multiple character attacks. And the slower army of Kite just simply suffers way more in this game mode, as they are not able to dictate the engagements how they want and cannot direct the flow of battle. Instead, I was taking all the initiatives there. With the cavalry, I picked my engagements. I was able to harass their backline, recharge their infantry, recharge their cavalry that got stuck on my own cavalry. I got to pick which engagements I want to fight. And of course, I'll pick those that are more advantageous to me in general, which massively worked in my favor, as I was able to basically kill off most of the Grand Cathay army, while my Kislev army accumulated a huge force over time. And this is why I think that Domination mode is not exactly ready for competitive gameplay yet. There are still a lot of flaws that needs to be fixed. They can definitely use some thought in the reinforcement mechanic and the resources distribution in both the starting army and the reinforcement pool. And of course, the combat mechanic, which has been an issue for quite a while now, they all need some work to make it balanced for multiplayer. Mobility is king in this objective game mode, where the faster army can dictate engagements, dictate the battles, as they have an easier time choosing what kind of engagements they can take, while the slower armies always on the back foot, always on the run, trying to respawn but failing due to their slower infantry, isolated armies and whatnot, resulting in a meta that favors faster faction like Slaanesh, Kislev and Khorne, while Nurgle and Grand Cathay will have problems in winning battles. I even have a Khorne army designed in the same mobility is king mindset, which will most likely be my first wild army build video for Game 3, but that will be another video for another time. As for the performance of the Cathay army, we have the Terracotta Sentinel. They're great at cutting down cavalry and whatnot. However, against the Great Warbears, both of them just got sniped pretty hard. Also, the pistols from my infantry did quite a good number on them, while my cavalry simply isolated and run down a lot of their own cavalry. The Kislev army does have better cavalry horses overall. And with the mobility advantage, I was controlling the battle, running down, harassing all these Jade Warriors crossbows as well as the Iron Hail Gunners, denying them from firing a lot of volleys, and their ammunition is mostly wasted. And of course, the Grand Cannon being knocked out, that bug really didn't help in protecting the Grand Cannon, because you simply can't pull out that artillery crew and rearm the artillery piece anymore. Overall, a great game from our opponent as well, just that the game mode favors mobile armies way too much, and the balance can use some work. And yeah, that's basically it for today's battle. I hope you enjoyed. If you do, remember to hit that thumbs up and subscribe to see more Total War Warhammer 3 content. I'll be doing more battle replays, including both Domination and land battles, and even making some meme army builds. Also, if you have any battle replays that you want me to cast it and showcase it on my channel, feel free to drop by my Discord or send me an email with the replay file attached. I'll be sure to check them out. Anyways, that's it for today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Tactical Lich, signing out.